Computer issues. Swear to God. All right, can people hear me out there? I almost didn't do this stream, and I'm starting to wonder if I should have, because now I'm getting nothing but hassles here in the trying to make my computer work. This computer is probably going to be replaced within the week, and it's just a complete mess. This has been a weekend of technical issues, because some of you might have known that we were going to be doing a live stream of inappropriate characters with Venger and Grimjim, but unfortunately there's been a problem in that Google, in all of its ridiculousness, has decided to cancel Google Hangouts, which, if you're a YouTuber, you might know that if you're doing a live stream, you can do a live stream like I'm doing right now directly with YouTube. But if you are trying to do a live stream with multiple people, like if it was me and other people, like inappropriate characters, you can't do that with YouTube. YouTube doesn't have the... So the easy way to do it that did exist was, because they were basically, is you had YouTube and you had Google Hangouts. And you would do a Google Hangouts and it would feed directly live into YouTube. And that was how we did inappropriate characters. That's how most people did Hangouts with live streams with YouTube. And then what happened is that for whatever reason, they decided to cancel Hangouts. And now there is literally no direct, easy way to do a multi-person live stream on YouTube. Which, when you think about it, is unbelievably stupid on YouTube's part, right? Because YouTube is the undisputed champion of online social media videos, but they only have really two significant other video websites that have given them competition, albeit in very niche ways, right? One of them, which is not really relevant here, is Pornhub, right? But the other one is Twitch. And Twitch, their whole deal is multi-person live streams, right? And so the live streaming of big games, whether it's computer games, RPGs, or whatever, but that's how they make their living, basically. And what they've done here is, in essence, given that away to Twitch, because now there's no easy way. I mean, I know that there are ways. People are saying on the comments here, OBS and all of that, yeah. And our tech guy is Grimjim, not me, and he's looking into this. He's going to figure out how's the best way to manage to do this. But it doesn't really change the fact that it's not an easy way to do it, right? And you had people who were trying to do, whether it was D&D live stream or video game live stream or whatever, but to do that on YouTube instead of Twitch. And what does YouTube do? It says, no, screw you guys. We're taking away the easy way to do that. And so obviously those people are going to go to Twitch. And that's, you know, like, what's the point? Why would you do that to yourself, you know? Like, how badly organized or how directly ignorant do you have to be to commit that kind of a mistake? Anyway, so this is the reason why there hasn't been an inappropriate characters tonight. Also, I then went out to dinner, spectacular dinner, but I wasn't totally feeling like coming back and doing this live stream. But then I decided, oh, what the hell, I should do it. I owe it to my fans, and so now I've been trying to do it. And meanwhile, my computer, which I need to be able to reference the comments on the chat, because on my phone I'm too old and the chat comments go too quickly and they're in too small type for me to really see them. So there we go. I've been trying to I have to look at your comments like at my snail's pace, and it's just ridiculous. This is just so stupid that I can't get this going, and trying to just give me 1 second here. Okay. I think I've just about got this. If you guys can even hear me right now. But I'm going to get a new computer and then I'll be able to do my basic work again. So anyways, this apparently is the live stream of me complaining about everything other than role-playing games. And I'm sorry about that. But here we are. That's the new reality we exist in. No, I'm going to get to the topic in just a moment or two as soon as I get to where I can get it going again. Meanwhile, everyone is still hearing me correctly. Is that right? Am I on? Somebody, anyone. I have no idea. Okay, Aaron, I have no idea. I am a technological illiterate. I have no idea how to change the resolution, and I don't know if I can change the resolution now this video. So we're either stuck with this or I quit. I don't know. How do I turn off the camera and not lose this video and have to start all over again? Is there a way to do that? Come on, you guys. I'm counting. Where is the weaponized autism I've always heard of? Anyone? I have no idea what you guys are advising me to do right now. Please explain it more basically. It seems all right. Okay, I'm trying to turn off some stuff on my computer to seem to get it running better. I do not know what happened there. Okay, cancel that. Hello, can you hear me now? I don't know if that's the internet connection or if that's that's the computer or what it is, but all right. Okay, let's get started then. Fuck it. That's it. I'm not going to close anything else. I'm not going to touch anything else. I'm just going to go. So once again, everyone, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, but certainly not the boss of my own computer. Now, hopefully I'm going to be, like I said, getting a new computer very shortly, and that'll take care of the problem. At least let's hope it does. So I don't really have, I didn't really come in here thinking of a topic, except the topic I was going to talk about if we'd had an episode of inappropriate characters. I'm kind of hoping that YouTube will get its head out of its ass and will realize, hey, you know what? It would probably be really good for our bottom line. I mean, I don't know if they care. At this point, it's like, you can't even guess. You can't even imagine, like, it's hard to accurately figure out if any given corporation still actually gives a damn about making profit, or are completely willing to run themselves into the ground for the sake of some kind of millennial idiots woke fantasy, right? Like maybe they think that multi-person live streams are white supremacy now or something like that, and they've said, no, we're not going to do that. We would rather go bankrupt. We would rather that it be replaced than end up allowing people to have multiple person live streams, because that's what the alt-right would want, or something like that. I mean, it's just, they're just morons at this point, right? It's like it used to be the one good thing you could rely on, whether you approved or not of the capitalist system. It used to be reliably predictable that massive corporations would put their personal profit above everything else. But that doesn't happen anymore, does it? Like now you see enormous corporations. I mean, Gillette was willing to lose, what was it, more than $1 billion for the sake of appearing woke by attacking their entire customer base. Like their customer base is men, right? And they attacked all men just because there was some women's studies major somewhere along the line who decided that's what they have to do. And this bunch of boomers in the chairmen of the board had no idea what that would do. And they just went ahead and did it. And now they're told, if you don't keep doing it, if you don't keep running your company into the ground, then we're going to call you, the name for a certain political movement of the 1930s. And then people will get mad at you. And they're like, oh, well, we don't want them to get mad at us. We better keep running our company into the ground, And so there we are. Like, so now maybe YouTube will end up getting its head out of its ass and allowing multi-person live streams, like setting that up so it can be done with Google and not requiring some kind of weird combination of programs all connecting into each other in what's bound to be a much less reliable format. Or maybe not. Who knows? So I don't know when the next episode of Inappropriate Characters would be. If someone has some kind of a really good idea for how to be able to make reliable multi-person live streams that, by the way, have to be reachable by phone in my case, right? My camera is my phone, so that's what I'm going with. Because, I mean, I do have a webcam, but it's not nearly as good as the webcam on this phone that I'm using. So, it can't be, you can't ask for a program that has to be done, that everybody involved has to be using a desktop, right? Or else we can't do it. But if you do have an idea for something really simple that will somehow magically allow the three of us to be on webcam together at the same time in a live stream, then by all means, don't tell me. Go over to the Inappropriate Characters channel and tell Grim Jim, because he's the one that's going to do it, because he's the guy that actually understands this nonsense. I don't. I understand like history and mythology, comparative religion, that sort of thing. I do not understand how to do a live stream, as this video that you are watching right now demonstrates. I think it amply demonstrates that. So the topic I would have done had we had an episode of Inappropriate Characters was related to one of my most recent videos. So in a very recent video, I think it was the last video. my long-term memory is mostly gone now. My short-term and middle-term memory are rapidly fading as a product of having enjoyed myself way too much in the college years. But I believe it was the last video. I had done a video about how the one really big and important thing that is missing from the 5th edition D&D rules that I think is the most notable or the most significant and important absence was the morale rules. And that changes the whole tone of the game. So if you want to see that, check it out. It's on my channel here. Look up. It's a very recent video. I think it was the last video I did. I don't remember, and especially not at this time. And yeah, so in this video, I made a lot of commentary about how 5e doesn't have morale rules, and then someone pointed out in one of the comments that in fact 5e does have optional morale rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Of course, I did at one point know that. I'll admit that I didn't remember that at the time I did the video. I knew that it didn't have morale rules as part of the core 5th edition rules, right? But this actually opens up a whole other subject, right? And the whole other subject is that, yes, okay, there are morale rules in the DMG, but no one uses almost anything from the DMG when they're running 5th edition. And why is that? Like, why would that be the we tried to do in the process of designing when I was doing trying to do is to make the new edition of D&D something super customizable, right? Like the idea was that it was really modular and really easy to take apart. 3rd edition, for example, you can argue whether it's a good or a bad system, but one thing about 3rd edition is that it's very difficult to modify. Because if you take certain stuff away or move stuff or change certain stuff, because of how the powers per level are set up, because of how the general power level is set up, because of things like the importance of certain magic items to be able to hurt certain creatures or to survive after a certain level, because of the freaking feat system and things like attacks of opportunity and the whole way that the 3rd edition was set up, it meant that if a DM tried to tinker with it, they could create a cascade of unexpected problems as a result of deciding, well, I'm just not going to use this particular feat, right? Because I'm not interested in it. But then that feat is a prerequisite for others, or it affects others, and then it changes the whole balance of the game. And so it doesn't let it work very properly. And what we wanted to do in 5th edition, what really Mike Merles and I were both very much in agreement about, I think, was that one of the ways in which we wanted 5th edition to more resemble old school D&D is that a DM should be able to make radical changes in the system, to take out a bunch of stuff they don't like, to add in a bunch of other stuff, and not break the game. And I think that design-wise, that happened, right? It really worked out. And the whole idea was to set the game up so it could do that. You'd have the basic set, which shows you how you can create a very lean core of the D&D rules. And even those can all be changed, theoretically. And then you had the player's handbook, which was the expanded version of that. And so you could say that those are the mainline rules of 5th edition. And then you'd have the DMG, which would be full of optional stuff that could give you some guidelines about some of the possible ways that you can alter the rules. So maybe one of my biggest surprises after D&D 5th edition came out, and really one of my biggest disappointments, was that in spite of the fact that I think we created a set of rules that were really, really good at allowing customization, almost nobody customizes 5th edition. The vast majority of 5th edition players just play it the way it is. You know, they play it, and not only that, but they demand official rulings. They go on Twitter and ask people who are way further down the totem pole than me in terms of the design process, people like Jeremy Crawford, of what the official answer to questions about very obscure D&D rules should be, right? And so this completely screwed up one of the central points of the kind of mission statement of 5th edition design itself, right? Like if you look at 5th edition, it's probably easier to customize 5th edition than any edition, certainly since at least 1st edition, probably since the original box, you know, because it has a very basic central core, and it's then very easy to work around, right? So it was really disappointing to me, because I was hoping, my dream was that we would end up getting a whole bunch of players that would really like the game, and that would end up creating, 1,000 points of light. They end up creating a whole ton of particular mods, particular versions, skins of 5th edition that they would then share with people. And so there'd be all these different slight modifications of how to run different types of games and a lot of creativity in that area. And none of that happened. It didn't. And I think the reason of that, frankly, it's the children's fault. I blame the kids, right? I blame the millennial fan base of 5th edition, who are fundamentally collectivist. They fundamentally want to obey some kind of collective leadership, and they don't like the idea of thinking for themselves, and so they didn't really want to do any of this, right? And there are these theories about generational theory, right? And I'm not sure I totally buy the kind of there was that very famous book that came out a little while ago. I think it was The Fourth Turning or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it's called. It's an analytical book. I wouldn't exactly call it a history book, but what it was doing was trying to suggest that that at least in Western civilization there tend to be these 4 different models of generations that are each a reaction to the previous one, and that you can look at the lens of American history through these steps of these 4 different types of generations. But what I do think that happens is that you have a kind of a yin and yang of generations in any culture. And these go back and forth between a generation that is much more about collective conformity, reacted to by a generation that's much more about individualism, right? So you have the millennials, and they're very clearly about collective conformity, right? They don't really care about individual rights almost at all. They're the most extreme version of this, at least in our lifetime, right? Before them, there's Gen X. And Gen X are absolutely about individualism. They refuse to like any kind of person telling them what to do, right? And then before that, you have the boomers. And the boomers, you think, well, because they rebelled against, the man and all that stuff, aren't they, the opposite? No, they're also basically about collective conformity. The boomers were supposedly the great rebels, but really they were rebels as long as they were all rebelling in the same way and with the same hairstyles, and listening to all the same music. And then they all pretty much collectively at the same time sold out completely and then became the big money makers in the 80s. They did all of the stuff as a group, right? The real individuals were the ones before that, the lost generation, who were a reaction to the greatest generation, which were conformists, right? So there's always a conformist generation followed by an individualist generation. And what we have here, it's interesting to me that I think probably the bulk of the OSR fan base, even though there are a few like oldies, there are a few boomers in there, right? That are the people that actually really were already living through as adults or nearly adults or whatever, the very early days of D&D, that are now active in the OSR as like the elder statesmen of the OSR. The rank and file of the OSR are people like me. They're Gen Xers. They're people who were kids at the time of the old school movement, right? Like that were just in their early teens or younger or barely older, right? But that they weren't really they weren't even college age at during the old school period. And so it makes sense that, of course, the OSR is this tremendously creative movement that are based on that idea of making all these mods, right? Of changing, taking these core rules and changing them into your own thing. So you take something that is basically, the D&D basic set, and then you turn it into something practically unrecognizable, like Lion and Dragon, right? Like it's still... You look at the skeleton of it is absolutely D&D. And so you look at it and go, oh, and it's even compatible and everything. But then everything else around it has been really, really changed into something absolutely unique. And then with 5th edition, because of the boom that 5th edition has benefited from, which is due to a combination of factors. Part of it was that the edition was really good. Part of it was that it was this sigh of relief after a terribly bad edition. And then a very big part of it was the popularity of nostalgia for the 80s that came back into mainstream media, including parts of that nostalgia where D&D itself featured prominently as a part of the nostalgia, like Stranger Things, more than anything, right? And then, to a lesser extent than some people try to make out, but also very important, the popularity of D&D live streaming using 5th edition in stuff like Critical Role. And so all of these things came together to create this big D&D comeback boom, right? And the vast majority of people that have gotten into 5th edition now are millennials, right? And millennials are awful people. I think we can all agree with that. and they are very much collective people. So they don't want to make their own versions of 5th edition. What they want is they want to know what is the vision, the thing that they're supposed to be told to do, and then do it, right? They want to be given the rules so that they can obey it, right? And then they want to shame anyone who tries not to, right? So like this is the mentality. Now we've got some Gen Z people that are starting to come in, and maybe things are going to change with that. And maybe what'll happen is that we'll have, this later stage 5th edition movement that'll come out with all these people that are just now getting into the game, that are that are getting into it as teenagers. In a year or 2 or 3 or 4, they're going to be college aged, and then hopefully, because I have a lot of faith in the Zoomers. I think the Zoomers are going to be, just as the millennials were the ultimate extreme of conformity, I think that the Zoomers might end up being the ultimate extreme of non-conformity, that they'll just be like shitlords on a level that will scare even me. I mean, you look at stuff like Soph's channel, right? And you're like, oh my God, like it's gonna be wild. I'm just gonna enjoy the ride, So hopefully, they're going to actually fix this problem. I am totally for the Zoomers. I'm putting all my hopes in them. It's like either they're going to save civilization or nothing will. So let's hope that they do. They're up for the job. Mr. Max, yes, you're right. Soph has been purged from YouTube, but you can find her on BitChute. You can also find me on BitChute. I've got a BitChute account there. Right now, all I do is post. Is automatically post videos from YouTube there. But if I ever get banned from here, that's where you'll find me. Assuming I can figure out how to upload an actual video on BitChute, which I have not yet learned to do. So no guarantees. Sorry. Anyway, so this is my basic theory about both the reason why nobody ended up using the morale stuff from D&D 5th edition's DMG, and also why millennials are terrible. And I don't even know if it requires any kind of debate. I think that it's all very self-evident. But if anyone opines different, feel free to say so in the chat. I'm going to just quickly glance through things that people have posted here in case there's anything important. Kid Cavalier says Virgin 5th edition versus Chad OSR. Yeah. We've got people saying 5th edition was hijacked by hipsters and soy boys. Someone here said, brace yourselves, I'm going to use a rule that will create a resonance cascade of unpredictableness that may rip the space-time continuum. Sounds fun. All right, well, I guess some people like to live dangerously and try to change 3rd edition rules. I think it's interesting also that there has been some success with the DM's Guild, I think is what it's called, which is the permitted official third-party publishing stuff on Drive-Thru-RPG of 5th edition materials. I mean, there's no question that there has been some success there, right? Like, there's a lot of Judges Guild? No, DM's Guild products that are for sale, some of which have sold really well. And considering the cut that both Wizards and DTRPG take from you if you publish there, you better sell really well if you're in it for the money at all, because like they do take a large percentage of it. It's why I would never make one of those products. But it's also interesting that as far as what I've seen, the stuff that comes out there is not like the stuff that comes out for the OSR. In the OSR, you see these radical, experimental, remarkably avant-garde, right? Like it's the funniest thing for me in the world, and just like perfect poetic justice, that the most avant-garde movement in gaming is not something that the SJWs at the Forge dreamed up. It's not anything that they're capable of making, because they just make garbage, right? But the ones that actually made stuff that is remarkably innovative and also remarkably good is the OSR, is the bunch of bearded grognards that they hate so much. But they're the ones that have been able to actually create something really worthwhile and that people actually buy and play. Why? Because they've come up with a set of design rules. They treat it like a craft and not like an opportunity to show off how pretentious you are, right? And yet what these products end up being is stuff that you could in theory be pretentious about, because they're really tremendously clever, and you don't see that cleverness on the side of these kind of Forge indie products, because it's like these people with no real discernible talents who throw garbage at a wall and call it abstract art, right? Like it has no fundamental value. And then on the other hand, you don't see it with the DMs Guild stuff, because they don't dare to do anything particularly radical, right? Like, I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't looked at everything there. So if you know about stuff that people have done for the guild that has ended up being really radical and innovative and interesting in the same way that the OSR stuff is, well, let me know. I think it was Mr. Max Voivin said, nice pipe. Yeah, that was a Lorenzetti Solitario egg and smoking blue board. Same Rise, that actually the 3 core books are pretty much politically neutral. I know that there was some controversy at the time that the books came out about like the section on gender, which was like 1 paragraph, right? And it basically says you can be whatever gender you want to be, and it doesn't really matter, right? And I think that's perfectly fine, right? There's no problem with that. The problem has come later, right? And it's become just ridiculous, right? Like some of the levels of making these demands of like the Seattle fantasy setting, right? Any world now that D&D is set in, any product that you're going to see, certainly any official product of Wizards of the Coast, and any product that you want them to approve of for you, is going to have to be in a setting where the moral values and the culture of that world and the attitude is going to be completely contemporary, right? Not just contemporary, but contemporary and progressive, because otherwise it's problematic, right? Now, I did hear an interesting rumor, and I don't think it's just a rumor, because I've seen the proof that was posted. I'm trying to remember where I saw this. It was either in the Inglorious OSR Mewe group, or it was there's this old school Dungeons and Dragons group on Facebook, the only group that I'm in, that I'm a member of on Facebook. So I don't do a lot of RPG related stuff on Facebook. But there's this one that I was invited to. It's got 1,500 members. It's got a whole bunch of the real, like, famous old school grognards. Really good group, really good conversation. And what somebody pointed out, there's this book, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, that was made by Jeremy Crawford, principally. I mean, there's several authors listed, but he's the primary author, so it was probably him. And then there's this other book called Central Casting. Now, Central Casting was a book that was written about 30 years ago, with a bunch of tables and really interesting stuff to help you create your characters. It was written by the person currently known as Janelle Jacques, who is a transgender woman, a very famous OSR person, somebody like, not OSR really, but old school person, somebody who who was one of the big movers of the old school movement of the old school period of design, really respected for their work, and and who is a trans woman. And Janelle Jacques wrote this book called Central Casting that had a bunch of things like tables for like circumstances of birth and stuff like that. Really interesting stuff. And apparently in Xanathar's guide, there's tables that are for things like circumstances of birth that have some entries that are pretty much identical to the ones that Jacques wrote about 30 years ago. And the thing about it is that Central Casting in particular was a book that was pretty popular among a certain crowd of people that were, in that design scene on the West Coast. Like, I know it had a big impact on some of the people that would later on be involved in the Wizards of the Coast area and White Wolf and all of those guys, right? So basically, it certainly looks as though Jeremy Crawford plagiarized a transgender woman. That's a bit problematic, isn't it? He's a white man and he has stolen material. Like, I mean, really, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the protocol at this point, I believe it calls for Jeremy Crawford to be fired and replaced with Janelle Jacques. I mean, it's the least you could do for her. She's stunning and brave, but besides that, she would be 100 times better, right? Because I mean, this is someone who actually knows how to design stuff, right? So like, maybe it's time, right? Maybe it's time for Janelle Jacques to take over Jeremy Crawford's job, given that they've plagiarized the Janelle Jacques work, right? It's really crazy, but go check it out, right? Like, there's pictures and everything that show, like, because it's, if the tables just said, like, I don't know, you were born in the West Country or something like that, but they don't, right? They have stuff like, I don't know, there are like 3 separate entries that are word for word copies, and they're all really weird things. Like, I don't know, you were born covered in red slime or something like that, right? Like, it's not stuff that someone would have just independently come up with, and it probably isn't stuff that someone would have just maybe unconsciously remembered from 30 years ago and accidentally done it, right? Like, this is stuff that you pretty much had to have been looking at the book at the time, right? Now, I'm not saying that it was necessarily Jeremy Crawford who did it, because like I said, there were multiple authors involved in in writing Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So it might not have been him, but he was the main guy. So isn't he ultimately responsible? And really, like, wouldn't we all rather have Janelle Jacques doing Jeremy Crawford's job than having Jeremy Crawford there? I think so, don't you? So there you are. If you came here to hear me bitch about millennials, this is the extra for those of you that have stuck around and that have continued listening, right? It is an exposure of a stunning hate crime against a transgendered person by a person in Wizards of the Coast who believes they're a really important game designer, but probably isn't. Mr. Max, you say, isn't Xanathar the first product lead by Kate Welsh? Oh, well, that would be even worse, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, as far as I know, Kate Welch is a cis hetero white woman, right? And man, if she's trying to like steal the words of a stunning and brave transgender woman, I mean, isn't that like just awful? My goodness. Romaine says, between Jacques and Crawford, is there any difference? Well, the one difference that I can certainly say is that Jacques has made RPG products that are good. I think that says it all, right? So like, they might be able to do it again, right? There we are. Jim Losetta, can I provide links? I certainly can't provide links without shutting down the video. But like I said, it was in one of those 2 groups. I'm 99% sure it was either the Inglorious OSR group on Mewe, or it was the old school Dungeons and Dragons group on Facebook. I think it was the latter. I think it was that one. So go check it out. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We've got a big chungus on the screen. Uh, yeah, so go check it out there and you'll see. I mean, that's all I can really advise you from here right now because I did not come prepared for that. I just decided to raise the point at this moment. Um, I just thought it was really hilarious, right? Especially since Crawford was trying to diss my contribution to fifth edition. It turns out his contribution to Xanathar may have just been plagiarism. Anyway, we have George Whittlesbuck, Lorraine McLaren, and Hoopy still have yet to kill Catboy. Well, that's true. The Catboy is still alive. He's managed to escape the man for at least for the moment. However, I will note, George, that you are now a character in the DCC campaign, and I've also thus far failed to kill George Whittlesbuck, Lorraine McLaren, Hoopy. So there is that too. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Right now, Catboy is I guess relatively safe. But at any time now, I mean, the man's down, but he's not out. He's still going to try to kill the Catboy. Yes, that's right. I'm not sure if every cat could take down a first level magic user, but one of my cats, the fat one, the big chungus you just saw on the screen there, probably could kill a first level magic user. Luckily, I'm like a 15th level magic user, so I'm cool. I'm fine. I got the hit points for it. Samuraiza says, Pundit is racist against the Nikos. I am not. However, I do despise anime and all of its products. So I guess if you mean like anime cat people, then probably yes. If you mean literal cats, I love them. I'm a big cat person. Not as big as the quartering. I want to clarify once again, because I don't want rumors to go around. Unlike the quartering, I do not own like 1,000 cats and dogs. Right? Apparently, this guy, I don't know what's up with him, but he's got like 50 cats and 30 dogs, and I don't know what. I have 2 cats, a thin one and a fat one, and that's it. So those are the only 2 you're ever going to see on screen, and those are all the pets I need. Thank you very much. So I am, unlike the quartering, I am not an old cat lady. Gonzo the Great says, partly inspired by you, I have started a new D&D YouTube channel called Dungeon Class. Check it out when you get a chance. Great show. Gonzo, what's Dungeon Class about? It is. I hope it's not a live stream, live play, critical role style sort of thing. It sounds as though it's some kind of advice channel. I don't know. The algorithm says, I'm a 47th level dungeon master. George Whittlesbach says, can I get the stats for myself? Well, eventually, maybe. The thing is, George Whittlesbach, Lorraine McLaren Hoopy has not yet actually appeared on screen, as it were, in the campaign. It's just a known fact that he's the one that hired the man who had killed the Catboy and then the Skyfearer. So he's the one behind it, but they've never actually bothered to try to like hunt him down or something. Aaron the Pedantic says, I chastise you. I guess that's Gonzo he would chastise for promoting on Pundit's chat. If he wasn't already the king of promotion seems legit. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not going to complain about anyone who comes on here and in the in the chat talks about something of theirs, as long as it isn't shitty, right? Because the risk you take is that if I look at it, if I deign to glance at it and then decide it's garbage, then you're probably going to get an earful about that. Right, Gonzo says his channel is D&D advice, not crappy. So, okay, people, you've heard about this channel. It's called Dungeon Class. I guess you should look it up and then come back here and tell me if it's worth it or not, if it's any good or if it's awful. And maybe I'll go and check it out. I'm a very busy person, Gonzo. I will send my minions to go look at your page and tell me what they think about it first, and then maybe I will come to inspect it myself. So, all right, we've talked about two things. Those are the one. I really only had one thing I was planning to talk about, which was the kind of the culture of fifth edition and how it is that fifth edition fans don't seem to want to self-modify the game, right? They don't want to use fifth edition. And one of the things it's best at doing, which is to like remake the game into other things, into other versions, into other iterations, to modify it in order to suit particular campaigns. Like the greatest thing about fifth edition is you can alter it to do like really high fantasy, really low fantasy. You can make it super gritty, super deadly. You can make it super cinematic where characters can hardly have any risk of dying. That's pretty close to the default version, I guess. But yeah, you can do all kinds of crazy alterations, and it can be a reliable engine. And yet, 99.99% of fifth edition players want to play it exactly rules as written, to the point that they ask people that are possibly guilty of plagiarism of how it is to how they should resolve particular rules minutia. Like that's how completely uncool these people are. It's just ridiculous. But there we are. That's how it goes. Aaron the Pedantic says, "Good seeing you all. Got some sleep to catch. Thanks for streaming, Pundit." Thanks for coming, Aaron. Kevin the Jordy says, "You can't sell DIY Pundit." I'm not sure whether that means that whether he's saying Pundit, you can't sell people on do-it-yourself, or whether he's saying that somebody else couldn't be a do-it-yourself version of me, or I'm not sure. You're gonna need to clear that up a little bit. I see. Kevin the Jordy does clear it up. He says, "Published material is for the non-creatives out there." Well, I don't know if that's true, because I think that there's a whole bunch of people that were not particularly creative. Those first few years of the OSR were not super creative. They were basically people doing clone jobs of old school rules and then maybe publishing some adventures for them. It was what I called the clone mania period, right? There was not great innovativeness, and in fact there was a culture that strongly discouraged doing anything that was outside of the limits of stuff that had actually appeared in print in old editions of D&D. And then the second wave of the OSR came along, and people started making stuff that did innovate, and it innovated in particular ways and in particular directions. And this inspired a whole snowball of a whole bunch of other people doing that too. So the entire culture of the OSR changed, to the point that the people that were the big fans of Clone Mania, the Grognards, the ones that thought of the OSR not as a super cool way to design new games with old school rules, but rather thought of it as some kind of a misguided quest to try to find the perfect proto one true platonic version of D&D, which I always thought was really stupid to do. Those people, to them, the OSR has become something unrecognizable, right? So I think you can create a movement that allows for people to get on board with and change their minds about how they run D&D. That they'll go from running D&D really like rules as written and must not change anything. And then they see somebody, I think if there was somebody who came along and did some kind of a really creative rules mod of 5th edition, other people would look at it and say, hey, hang on a minute, I can do the same damn thing, right? Like I could also really radically change the 5th edition rules into something that's really different from the mainstream, but also super cool. And then other people would go, yeah, I could do that too, right? And suddenly you could have this explosion. So I'm still have my hopes that will happen in the 5th edition. I think probably it'll be a Zoomer who does it, though. I don't think it'll be a millennial. I think it'll be someone who right now is probably like 15 years old, right? And then they'll do it in 4 or 5 years, maybe. Anyway, Same Riza says, the first campaign I played in college was so millennial that I was the only human in the group, next to a gay polyamorous lizard person. Well, yeah, that is one funny detail about it, right? Like millennials have also been taught to despise humanity, right? They've been taught, first of all, to hate all Western civilization. Second, to hate anything that comes out of Western civilization. And third, but also very important, to hate human beings in general, right? Like between deconstructionism, postmodernism, anti-colonialism, feminism, and finally the environmentalist movement, they've basically been taught to despise humanity and themselves, right? So it's not a big surprise that millennial D&D gamers don't want to play either humans, like they really don't want to be humans, and then they also don't want to play the conventional Tolkien races, right? Elves, dwarves, halflings, right? Because those look too Western and might therefore be, white supremacist or something, right? Like it's just stupid, but this is how these people think. So that's why you have like these parties that are made up of all different multicolored genassis and tieflings and who knows what else, because those are nonsense races that were invented by hipsters from the West Coast, and therefore allow them to play at being something that is not human and therefore potentially not evil in their minds, and and that will be something that is also diverse or something like that. It's just so stupid. The most diverse race you could possibly play in D&D is a human. All the other ones are stereotypes, right? So or archetypes. The good ones are archetypes. The bad ones are stereotypes. But and by good or bad, I mean goodly or badly designed, right? Orcs and elves are archetypes, right? Genasi or tieflings are stereotypes. Anyway, the point is that human is the best character class you can play, and we have an entire generation that doesn't want to be human. It is all just self-loathing, as Adrian McClear has just said in the comments. Same Riza, this is funny stuff. Says, I just played a superstitious country bumpkin that thought every strange noise was a ghost or demon. Yeah, that's a perfect description of from a starting point for a starting level character. And then everybody else had super long backstories. Yeah. Everybody wants to have super long backstories because they don't know how to play long campaigns. This is stuff I've covered in my previous videos. And by the way, if you're watching this and you have not yet done so, be sure to check out those and be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you will be notified of future live streams and other videos when they come out, because there are going to probably be times when YouTube won't tell you that they come out, because I'm pretty sure I'm on some kind of list. Welcome to the bright new tomorrow. Like the day when Donald Trump decides to enforce free speech on the internet cannot come soon enough. Buried Axeblade says, what's up with monster PCs? The goal to win D&D was to become DM and play monsters. I'm not sure that's ever what the goal was, because I mean anybody who wanted to DM could just DM right from the start. The goal to win D&D, I think, was to like have the highest level character you've ever had, right? Or something like that. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to the channel and be sure to share this video and share any of my other videos that you find interesting on your social media, because that's the best way to get people on board with my channel. We've got a large number of subscribers at this point. I don't know exactly how many now, but it's like, what are we at? 1,300 and some. That's pretty good for a non-live streaming RPG channel. And I want to thank everyone who has subscribed so far. And if you want to support me besides subscribing and sharing, then I do have a Patreon and a PayPal button, a Patreon account and a PayPal button. And you can feel free to subscribe there to send me money, or send me one-time or subscription money or whatever, if that's what you really want to do. But what you could also do is pick up my products. A lot of them are very reasonably priced. You'd be surprised how cheap Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion are relative to their quality. The hardcover of Lion and Dragon, I think, is like $26, something like that. And the hardcovers of Dark Albion are really cheap. So check those out. But also check out my RPG Pundit Presents weekly periodical, I guess you'd say, which is every week I put out a supplement that is usually somewhere between 10 to 30 pages long on some subject in OSR area descriptions. There's special rules, there's random tables, there's monster manuals, there's all kinds of stuff, alternate magic systems. So you're going to find some product that you like. Check it out. And it's a great way to send me a tip the way you might if you did a Patreon subscription, but also at the same time getting for yourself something interesting that you might be able to use in your own gaming or plan to game very soon in the future. And you want to find stuff that's interesting for it, right? And if that way you can support this channel and support my work and at the same time get something back for yourself, why not, right? Our latest issue of RPG Pundit Presents is a little bit unusual. It's RPG Pundit Presents number 88, and it's expanded magical technique lists for Lion and Dragon. So there's a specific product for Lion and Dragon. Most of my RPG Pundit Presents issues are set up, though some of them may use those stat blocks from Lion and Dragon or something like that. They're set up so you can use it with any OSR game. But this particular one, number 88, is a specific modification of the magic tables in Lion and Dragon. Lion and Dragon uses a magic system totally different from the standard OSR magic system. It's not the Vancian memorization system. Instead, it's a system of ritual magic based on actual medieval authentic sources, like the medieval authentic magical grimoires. It's a particular and unique system that is based on how medieval people really believed magic worked. And it's really cool, but it means it has a totally different set of mechanics. And in this case, is the source book specifically to put together, to kind of collate the parts of those rules that are in Lion and Dragon, like that's a complete system. But the system has a number of different techniques of magic you can use, so like alchemy, astrology, talismans, battle magic, curing magic, etc., of different kinds that you would learn as your character levels up. And then in the RPG Pundit Presents, you have a number of source books that introduce new techniques like glamour, enchantment, the Path of Trees. There's folk magic rituals, and then there are a number of source books that present different types of grimoires that will teach you special techniques that you can only learn from the grimoires. And then there's stuff like there's an issue of the RPG Pundit Presents called the Arcana, which is all about the tarot and using the tarot as medieval authentic magic. So lots of interesting stuff like that. And the point is that the latest issue of RPG Pundit Presents takes all of those, describes what each of them does, and then creates new tables for you to use if you're a DM that incorporates all of those new magical techniques for you to run with your game. It's a product for somebody who owns Lion and Dragon and who wants to pick up the magic supplements for Lion and Dragons that have come out in the RPG Pundit Presents series. And unlike the other products that are all priced somewhere between 99 cents and I think $3.99 or $4.99, somewhere like that, in that range, the $1 to $5 range, this one, number 88, is actually pay what you want, so you can decide whatever you pay there. But I want to make it really clear that it is something specific for Lion and Dragon. So if you don't already own Lion and Dragon, you wouldn't really understand what that table is for, even so, or what those rules are for. But check out the other 87 issues if not, right? Like if you do own Lion and Dragon, pick that one up. Sure, why not? Like, I mean, you could use it, and then you'll get a handy list of every single addition to the magic system since Lion and Dragon came out. But if not, pick up any of the other 87 issues. The one before that was High-Powered Assholes of the Last Sun, which is a list of NPCs that you could add into your weird Gonzo fantasy game based on my Last Sun campaign, which includes all of these people, including the Catboy, the one that George McLaren keeps wanting me to kill. So you could get the stats for the Catboy in that issue. And the one before that was a medieval authentic city guide to Kingston on Hull, which is an actual medieval city that I've set up. It gives you all the areas, the rules, the families, the laws, the local customs, the taxes, and monsters and legends and folklore in the city and the surrounding area. So it has this whole little city that you can set up You can put it into your campaign world, or you can use it as the home base for a medieval authentic campaign of Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion. It's really cool stuff. But yeah, so if you want to support me, purchase my games or purchase my RPG Pundit Presents issues. Or if you really want to, you can support me on Patreon, or you can support me on PayPal. Or if you don't have any money at all, you don't even have a buck to buy an RPG Pundit Presents issue, well, then you can also support me by sharing my video. In fact, everybody should, even if you do support me financially, then support me also by sharing the videos, because that's a big way to draw more people in. Anyway, we've got, somebody says, medieval authentic magic is like 90 spells to get your cows to produce more milk. Well, Adrian, there are in fact spells that are for fertility reasons. Those were a very important thing, both to make like crops grow and to make women get pregnant or stuff like that. Those do exist in the Lion and Dragon family of magic. Someone says Mordenkainen's miraculous milkmaid. That's Drudy002. And summon tin elemental milker. Okay. Same Rises says, why is necromancy a debate now? It's just evil. Is necromancy a debate? Like what? I think I missed something there, Riza. Is there something going on with necromancy? Have woke people been condemning it or something? I know that woke people have sometimes condemned like telepathy and said that telepathy is basically rape or something like that, which is a very interesting take. It's kind of funny coming from people who want to control your thoughts, right? That they would have some kind of issue with something that would let you read other people's thoughts or manipulate them. And it also, I guess it relates to this idea that they have that, your feeling about something is equivalent to reality or something like that. Kind of weird. But I haven't heard anything about people debating necromancy. I see. Same Risa says, online people are trying to say necromancy is okay and you can play a good necromancer. Well, yeah, that does seem a bit, I don't know. Thing is that there's two different ways to talk about necromancy, right? Because there's the necromancy in the sense that we tend to use the word now, which is this kind of cinematic sense of the wizard that raises the living dead and then controls them, right? Like that's usually what you think of in D&D if you hear the word necromancer, right? It's like the term necromancy really didn't mean raising the dead. It meant speaking to conduct the equivalent of something like a seance, right? Where they would summon up the spirit of the dead. And that comes out of like the old tradition of witch doctors and shamans and stuff like that. That it was often very important to be able to find out what your ancestors thought about what you were doing, right? So it was about talking to the deceased. And I certainly think that is something that you can play a good version of that, because that was something that often in many primitive societies was a vital cultural role. It's the person who could consult the spirits of the ancestors or the spirits of the dead or whatever, right? The person that raises the dead, I think in any culture, is seen as evil, right? Being responsible for creating the living dead, that was always seen as really bad, right? And so this idea that it would be okay for somebody, that somebody could be a lawful good person that raises the dead or something like that, yeah, that sounds completely stupid. But it depends what type of necromancer you're talking about. And I mean, sometimes I've even seen the word necromancer used in the context of like an exorcist, right? Which is someone who banishes the spirits of the dead. And obviously that could be seen as somebody who's good, right? Somebody who removes possessing spirits. All right, so anyone got any other topics to talk about, or should I start wrapping things up? Any questions for the pundit tonight? I'll let you guys think about that for a moment while I pick a new pipe. know. FS Mora says, woke people taking the side of evil and trying to convince you that good is evil and evil is good? I'm shocked. Yeah. Foucault and Derrida have a lot to answer for, don't they? Griffian says, oh, I came in late. Well, there's always someone who comes in late, and they always say, and welcome aboard. We may or may not continue for a little while longer. I'm thinking to see if we have anything. Topic number one having been why don't use fifth use, which is heavily modding it. Topic number two ended up being how somebody involved in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and ultimately Jeremy Crawford is responsible for this, apparently plagiarized the 30-year-old book written by a trans man. Problematic. And then topic number three, I don't know, we've kind of been veering around a number of things, including just now talking about necromancers. Kevin DeJordy asks, why did nothing significant come out of Gen Con? I guess that is a good question. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what the problem is here, but we're working on it. I was saying, get woke, go broke doesn't just mean financially broke, because that's certainly a part of it, apparently. I mean, there are an awful lot of companies that have gotten woke and lost an awful lot of money and or become bankrupt. But there's also the idea of intellectual bankruptcy, right? Because the fact is, woke people are incredibly reliably uncreative. They're just incapable of producing stuff of any value at all. You see this in modern art. You see this in the fact that the left can't meme. And you see this in the fact that RPG products produced by pretentious leftist West Coast hipsters are games that no one actually wants to play, right? And of course, you see it in the comics, right? These absolute no-talent hacks that we're interested in reading, that take incredibly popular characters like Spider-Man or something like that, and just tank it to where they're selling like less than 5,000 copies a month, to the point that now, apparently, from what I've been hearing, and I'm not an expert on the comics, but apparently Warner, who are the owners of DC, are very, very seriously considering just shutting down the comics section forever. And I wouldn't be surprised if a similar thing is being strongly considered at Marvel, because both of them have imploded in sales, right? Like they just have stunningly bad sales. They each have, I think, like one or two titles that do well. And relatively well, like where 50,000 is like a really, really good day, right? Like that's Batman, right? Batman maybe sells 50,000. And this is like 1/10 of what Batman used to sell. So it's still horrible. It's just absolutely horrible, right? So anyways, yeah, creative. Now they did do one thing, which is that they changed kind of the rules of the Ennies. And the Ennies did have a setup where it was very easy to gamify their whole thing. I don't know if the new version of it is or not, but I do know that there were certainly a couple of products that won Ennies that were basically because people had figured out the trick of how to rig the voting, So maybe that won't happen anymore. Adrian McClear, sorry, hang on before that. George Whittlebuck, Lorraine McClear, and Hoopy says, will chainmail combat be a thing again? I don't think so. Adrian McClear says, you've touched on this. Uh-oh. Hey, careful. What are you doing, Chungus? Don't wreck the live stream, Chungus. No. What are you doing? All right. Adrian McClear said, you touched on this, but why do people not understand fiction anymore? The pathetic fallacy abounds. Well, that is a good question, and I think in short, a very brief form of explanation is that, first of all, fiction itself is badly done now, because it's fiction. Most modern fiction, in fact, is just badly done. Was badly done already, and now it's worse, because you have people that like when you have a culture that's become postmodernist, it can't understand symbol anymore, right? It no longer has the ability to grasp archetype like metaphor, which is like the shallowest aspect of understanding symbol, becomes really, really difficult for them. So they're really incapable of connecting in this deep way, this primal human way, through the the language of symbols, to these deeper concepts in the way that people could in the past with mythology and legend, right? And myth and legend were way better at it than modern literature. The novel is called novel because it's relatively new. It's only a couple hundred years old. And it was really a much crappier, lowbrow sort of concept than myth, right? Like myth is something way more powerful than any novel-based literature. And the best novel-based literature, the most popular, the one that affects people in the deepest ways and that obtains some kind of enduring fidelity from the people, are novels that touch on myth in some way, right? And the same thing with movies and TV and all of that, right? Like the reason Star Wars matters so much to people is because it is modern myth. And the reason why the new Star Wars movies are so horrible is because they're not myth anymore, because people fail to understand how to make myth anymore, because they can't understand the concept of symbol and archetype anymore. So this is where it all falls apart. And we no longer have a common symbolic language in the West. We used to have one that was based. You could be an inculcation from childhood, like from the moment you were born, oblivion at this point, because there's nothing left. The most fundamental, like, you know, it's like the spinal thing dies, right? It's like civilizational leukemia, right? Like you're not going to survive that if you don't get a new infusion very, very fast. Somebody said, Dracopol quotes, I want to talk today about good and evil, and how evil can sometimes be good, and how good can sometimes be evil, and how I used to practice evil good until I discovered good evil. And that apparently is from Mad Magazine, which, by the way, got canceled because, you know, get woke, go broke. Iron Claw says, have you heard anything about Chivalry and Sorcery 5th edition? No, I haven't. I've been a huge Chivalry and Sorcery fan, to be honest, ironically, because, you know, it was kind of like a sort of pseudo attempt at doing medieval authentic old school and whatnot. Oh, Jesus. Here we go again. Hey, Chungus, careful, you're attacking my book there. Oh, God damn it, cat. What's up with you, Chungus? What's going on? What's this? Hello? Hello. All right. But no, I haven't heard anything about that. Sage of Sorcery Productions says, do you think that the culture is close to shifting back away from ridiculous leftism, given how poor an effect it has on sales? I think that there's hope. I'm not entirely certain. I'm sorry that my sound is awful. I don't know if that's my fault, the cats, the computers, or the phones, but doing what we can here with what I've got. Buried Axeblade says, Mike Merle's had a chat on D&D Beyond in the last 2 weeks about the difference between fantasy and science fiction. It's worth watching. Deep subjects. Well, I didn't watch it. I'm not familiar with what he said there, but I'm sure it would be an interesting thing to hear what he thinks about, if he still actually has honest thoughts to share with the public anymore. At one point, I had some very good conversations with Mike Merles, and he used to be a frequent commenter on my blog and often commented very interesting things. So I know that he has the potential to say things worth hearing. Lately, he hasn't been doing as much of that as I might like. Dracopol says, sometimes cutting video resolution. Apparently I'm having trouble with the resolution. I'm sorry about that, guys. Says cutting video resolution to a minimum helps the sound get through well. Okay, I'm gonna I'm going to try to keep that in mind next time. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to do that. Does anyone have any idea, like when you're doing a live stream using YouTube, the YouTube app on a phone, how you change the video resolution? I'm not sure. Dracopol says the internet is sometimes interrupted by streams of stampedes of llamas where he lives. Well, we don't actually have llamas in Uruguay, but we do have big chungus, and I have been interrupted. And every time chungus walks past my phone seems to lag for some reason. Maybe it's like some weird gravitational effect as the phone is being sucked into the cat. So apparently, like what Merles was saying was he was pointing out that fantasy is closer to truth and sci-fi is closer to rules. Is that right? Okay. I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's true. I think I'd have to watch that to find out what I think about it, like what was actually said. FS Mora says, fantasy is mythical, hard SF is speculative fiction. Yes, true, but really good science fiction should also be mythical, I think. And fantasy should definitely be mythical. Fantasy that isn't mythical is really going to have a lot of trouble. I mean, unless you're doing it as historical, right? Either fantasy or science fiction could also be historical in the sense of acting as though what you're doing is a chronicle of a history, right? Which is, for example, what Song of Ice and Fire is, right? Like that, that's not written. It's not really written the way a novel is written. It's written as if it is a series of historical events that are happening. So it's more like a nonfiction book with historical accountings or something like that, right? And that makes it radically different than a novel, because if that's done properly, it means you have to create a world that has real sort of a historical feel of events. And that makes for much more interesting storytelling, because a novel, the problem with the novel is that it was always formulaic. Novels have a formula. We all learned that formula in English class, like with the premise and the antagonist, the protagonist, and then the various stages of action, and then the climax, and then the resolution, and then the denouement, right? Like it's a very formulaic way to tell a story that is an incredibly shallow story, because it's neither realistic in the sense of a historical chronicle, nor is it, nor does it speak directly to the soul the way that myth does. So it's the worst of both worlds. Buried Axeblade says, will people try to identify as tieflings or trolls, etc. in the next year? Well, I don't know. Thing is that next year is when the very first Zoomers start going to college. And I expect that college is going to turn into a very interesting place at this point, because they have had years of ever-increasing forced indoctrination, and you have to take like the woke seminar when you enter, and they've probably gotten used by now to having these good little students that are all going to sit there and really suck it all in and just be loving how woke they are and all this, and obeying and wanting to be told what to do, and wanting to obey and to look for people that don't obey and punish the people that don't obey. And now suddenly they're going to start getting, maybe just a little at first, so that in ever increasing numbers, groups of students that are just going to tell them to go fuck themselves, like in a huge way. And I think that that's going to be super funny. Buried Axeblade says, Truth Stream Media has a video yesterday about people identifying as vampires, and there are articles that say we are to blame if we don't accept cannibalism. Yeah. Well, welcome to 2019. 2020 is going to be the really interesting one, though. I think that's that's when you're going to see things really start to turn, especially towards the end of the year. Big changes are coming. Anyways, I think maybe it's about time to stop here. We're at about an hour and a half into the video. I want to thank everyone who came and watched. I want to thank everyone who's watching later. And once again, please share the video everywhere you can. And if you're, if you want, please check out my products and my RPG Pundit Presents weekly periodical, where you can give me a tip. They all cost about $1 to $5, something like that, depending on their size. And you'll get a product that has something really interesting for you that you can use in your D&D game, in your SR game, in your fantasy game. Most of them are super easy to adapt because I made them that way. And at the same time, you're sending me some cash to encourage me to keep making more videos and more live streams and things like that. I promise that the next time I do a live stream, I will already have a new computer. I refuse to do another live stream until then. So hopefully next time we'll have less technical issues, because I suspect that what's happening is that there's a lot of drain going on with the computer that's affecting my internet connection, that's affecting, therefore, the streaming. I don't know. I am also going to see if I can try to figure out how to make it stream more effectively, because obviously if changing the video resolution on the camera when I'm trying to do this is something that makes it better, given that I'm not exactly, this isn't really a particularly visual show, that would be something that I could change. But I have to figure out how to do it. I have no idea how to do it. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming in. And I hope to catch you all soon. Keep an eye open also for when Inappropriate Characters figures out its shit and decides to have another live stream. Currently smoking near a Hawkbill plus Image Virginia. Thanks. Peace out.